Hi to the five. All right, well, Mr. Poley, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me around to your beautiful recording space.
It's great to have you. Have you been here before?
No, first time.
Terrifying.
You've designed this space ergonomically. It's ridiculous.
There's as much stuff as I can fit into one. I mean, it's a spare bedroom of a house. It's pretty full of gear. The long-term plan is without doubt to build a studio, to be able to put amps and cabs in a separate room, but that costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And currently with my lifestyle and touring a lot, that's not the most practical thing to be spending on, so gradually we'll be saving for that. So
talking about your lifestyle, obviously you've been doing this for some time. I met you in 2014, I think, somewhere there, 2014, 15, back when you were pretty much just session playing full on. Mm-hmm. And now you still do a lot of session playing, but you're also the musical director of Rumours of Fleetwood Mac as well.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of remote recording. I think one of the conversations you and I have had a lot off camera, Scott and I hang out socially all the time.
We've never met before, honestly.
Could you give like a brief introduction to how you've gotten to where you are now?
Sure. Well, I started playing blues in blues clubs when I was 13, 14 years of age. I would get up and play with Otis Grand and the big blues band, which was over here. That was big. They had a guy called Jimmy Thomas was their lead singer at the time. He was the male lead singer for the Ike Turner Revue. So it was Jimmy Thomas, and then Tina Turner was the female lead singer, of course. So I was starting to do that, kind of had my own band for a little while. And then for me, it was more stylistically, it wasn't really developing a lot, and I wanted to get more. I got into production. My school had a studio, which was a big deal for me. And I had the keys at one point when I was 16, 17. Opening up that production realm, that was a lot more exciting to me than just trying to work in that kind of predefined blues format. So I went off and did that, and then went to university and studied at LIPA doing sound engineering. I've done playing and recording a lot. So I had pit band experience. I've done a little bit of West End stuff, theatre gigs. I toured with a Canadian folk artist named Cara Luft, who's one of my heroes actually. It was great to play with her. We toured all over Europe and did all that stuff, and then kind of branched out into playing different instruments gradually over the time. So the pedal steel right here has become a big deal for me. And then Rumours has been a big deal, I suppose, as well. I took over as musical director probably not that long after I met you, actually. Mm-hmm. And then my job was to make it sound more authentic to the original Fleetwood Mac recordings. So taking it back and trying to analyse specifically, is that keyboard sound a Fairlight? Or is that a Moog? Mm. Or is it a DX7? Because that matters. Yeah. Although the people in the audience will not notice that. They will notice the fact that it doesn't sound right. Yeah. And that's really important. So that's kind of my job. And I play guitar in the band as well and play all the Peter Green stuff. But yeah. So that's kind of roughly where I'm at the moment. And then gradually starting to write my own music, and that's going to be a big deal going forward, is composing more and investing more time in that. And yeah, just I guess I've done a lot of different varied things along a similar couple of themes of enjoying music, enjoying sound and creativity, and working with talented people. I just love making music. I love being in the studio, whether it's being there as an arranger and a producer and overseeing the whole thing, or whether it's getting into the nitty-gritty and playing with a great band or playing different styles of music. I just find it's all sound. It's all very interesting to me. Yeah, I've been watching this guy Billy Strings recently, right? Have you seen him? Great bluegrass guitar player. He has like a magnetic pickup as well, so he'd play like Black Mountain Rag and then just go screaming into a Van Halen solo on an acoustic guitar, and says, I just want to incorporate, I played Van Halen when I was a kid and I want to incorporate that into what I do. Yeah, that's what it's about. We're not stuck in a corporate job. We don't have to go down a specific route. If something's appealing creativity, then that's probably what I've pursued more than anything else in my career.
We've played on a variety of genres together, everything from pop to a lot of country stuff, some blues things together.
We did jazz.
We did do jazz. A jazz big band record with an artist called Ray Quinn. But we've also produced together. When did you start kind of getting into production?
Well, it was when I had in my school's studio. When my school when it was the Millennium they got grants here in the UK. So different schools got grants for different things, and my school put in for a recording studio. So they got this incredible build of a studio with a Soundcraft 16 8x2 console, an 8-track Fostex hard disk recorder. We had the compressor, and we had a lexicon. We had a Neumann TLM 193.
What?
At my school. So they had an engineer for 6 months, and of course then the funding goes and they can't keep the engineer on. When I was old enough, they basically gave me a set of keys. I could just go into the studio whenever I wanted. So I was reading articles pre much stuff being on the internet. No YouTube tutorials about like Jeff Lynne recording, either I'd read something about him recording the snare drum after the drum kit, so you do your kick and hats.
Yeah.
And because I can play a bit of drums, I'd do that and then turn the compressor up and room mic the snare.
Yeah.
And record that afterwards. And it sounded like the record. So that to me was just like absolute mind blown. Because I always thought that was really interesting, how there was different things in different places on records and things that you couldn't play on Beatles records because they were studio trickery, and the buzz has never really gone. It's just, I guess, adapts in different ways.
I think talking about adaptation, all of us have to kind of keep a lot of things running at one time, not just to pay the bills, but also to keep inspired.
I mean, it's very easy to just quote pandemic here and just say, well, all my work went. But naturally, things change. So I'm going to try and avoid saying that. The way studios have worked in the past is different than how they do now. I mean, the historic large recording studio with a big console and loads of studio musicians, that's not there anymore. Very rarely. It is around, and it is a great way of making music because it's so immediate. You get to hear basically the full record on the first take. But budgets are not there from labels. A lot of artists self-funding projects. Of course, things like cost of living have gone up so much. That's just not, it's not a thing anymore. The days of me carting guitars and pedal steels out to studios every week. I used to do 3-4 sessions a week. And that's just gradually, then it will be 3 sessions a week, or it'd be a session every 2 weeks. And it's just not there in the same way anymore. So to sustain a career, you've just got to adapt. It's not all doom and gloom. It's different. The type of music I like, which was generally recorded before mid-1970s, was people in a room making a noise. And I think there is something very valid about that, because it sounds like a room. And no amount of trickery and AI and whatever can mimic people, because if I were to hire you on drums, that's very different than hiring another great drummer, because you will groove differently, and the sound of that will affect the music dramatically, or it will inform my musical choices. I love working with different people. I mean, I've been working with artists, like you say, from all over the place, and you get to hear all this great music or people's different ideas on music. It's different.
One of my favorite things about hiring you is I know that you're going to show up with a great sounding Telecaster and perhaps a guitar I've never heard of. You've spent a lot of time building this arsenal of crazy instruments. Was that a conscious decision, or have you always just been intrigued by the more slightly left of field sounding things?
The short answer to that is both. The long answer is I've always, like I said before, I just love the sound of different instruments. I have always been fascinated. My granddad liked country records. My dad liked soul and the Beatles. There's tons of stuff. I just love all types of music. So as a result, I want to have, in the ideal world, a Telecaster that sounds like Steve Cropper. I want a Les Paul that sounds like Paul Kossoff. But I also love the sound of Buddy Emmons playing steel, or I'll go home and listen to sitar music. Not that I have a sitar. Don't quote me on that one. But not yet. But no, the practicality of it was I played drums for quite a long time, up till, I don't know, 18, 19 years of age. I had a Premier Sun kit, the same as Keith Moon's one. 24-inch kick, 13, 14, 18 floor.
What?
Yeah, it was the same. It's like a gold colour. You can see him right at the end of his career. It didn't have any bottom heads.
Oh my word.
Yeah, it sounded enormous. But yeah, so I played drums for a while and guitar, but there were lots of drummers and guitar players. About that time, I was interested in pedal steel. I'd got a B-bender on my first Telecaster and really started to get into string bending more and the country stuff. But there wasn't room in the house for a pedal steel, a drum kit, and guitars. I remember saying to my dad, there's a lot of drummers out there and a lot of guitar players out there, but there ain't many pedal steel players out there, so I might get another gig if I learn to play pedal steel. There's certainly less of them.
Turned out to be a pretty good decision.
Yeah.
There's still not a lot of pedal steel players.
There's still not a lot. There's a few more now. It's great.
whenever I have worked with people that play more than just guitar, the way that they play guitar is inherently very different. If I think about the work that we did on that Warm Audio Wampex video, the lines that you pick to play are not just standard guitar lines or perhaps a more country-informed line. Like, you're coming at it with a very different approach. It sometimes feels like I'm being haunted by a pedal steel, but it's just you with a Telecaster. Would you encourage people to perhaps pick up different instruments to improve their vocabulary on their perhaps main instrument?
If you would like to have any money, no.
This is Scott Poley's way of answering questions. It's just like, I appreciate how you formed this question. No.
Of course the answer is yes. It's really good for any musician to learn and really listen to what a drummer's doing, to play, like trying to play so the bass locks in with the drums, the guitar locks in with the groove of the kick drum. So if you can understand that and learn a bit more about the different instruments, I don't think you necessarily have to play the instruments. I've been listening to a lot of, do you remember a band called Focus from the 70s? They did like Hocus Pocus and Sylvia, so they're a Dutch prog rock band. You will have heard some of the songs, but their guitarist Jan Akkerman has a really distinctive, he did the thing that I do all the time with the fading the guitar's volume in, so it gives that kind of wah sound, but that's just a pedal steel thing, right? Jan Ackerman's phrasing on those Focus records that I heard before I ever played pedal steel, without doubt, has affected the way I play steel. No question about it. It's like Derek Trucks, if you listen to a lot, Derek Trucks, great slide guitar player. If you listen to a lot, he studied with a sarod player, the Indian fretless instrument. And he definitely, there's a huge influence there, 100%. It does. So to answer your question, yes, it does make a huge difference to understand how other instruments work. And if you're doing this professionally as well, I think there's an element of it. It does you really well to walk into a room and say, "Oh wow, you play mandolin. What kind of mandolin is that?" I just think that's a really cool thing to do, rather than saying, "What is that?"
Let's talk about some of the longevity aspects of it. Things that you and I have spoken about quite a bit is deadlines, load of work, sometimes not load of work. These things have quite an effect on our mental health. They have quite an effect on our physical health. Perhaps in our professionality, sometimes it becomes really challenging to kind of keep things maintained. How do you keep the blade sharp? How do you keep on top of things just running all the time?
I will speak for me. I have been learning how to say stop. I've generally been working the last couple of years, maybe 10 till 6 during the day. And that allows me to get up and go for a run in the morning or do some sort of exercise routine, because especially when you sat down in studios all the time, that's not good for me, not good for my mental or physical health. Building walks, something you said about, it's like we are stopping between 3 and half 3 to go for a walk in the afternoon. We are stopping at 6, no matter how far you're into it. Yeah, you can push that till half 6 in the evening, sure, but you need to take regular breaks. I find walking is a really good thing for me, and just having that space to find some clarity. And again, this is just me, but I get a lot of relief in the fact that I'm doing something different. There are a lot of people who, talking specifically about Rumours that I play for, the band I play for, there are other members of the band that will wake up in time for sound check, and they get their main buzz during the day is doing the gig. And all they want to do is get that buzz off doing the gig. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. In many ways, that's what you do music for. But to me, my buzz is the whole day. It's the getting up and going for a really nice walk or run, going for a nice coffee. It's it's lifestyle and building that into what you do as well. It's a really big deal for me, and I would encourage certainly anyone that's working very long hours in the studio, that's not super healthy long term.
It's weird how when you put a limit on something, your creativity is way better because you only know you have this much time. I haven't been able to figure that out with video editing yet. I don't know when to stop video editing.
It was all working perfectly until we both started YouTube, wasn't it?
So much easier with other people's music.
I think a lot of creatives think because they're creative, the principles of normal people who have 9-to-5 jobs don't apply to them. And certainly for me, I think they do. And building a business and actually trying to sustain your career, get involved in things that are not just doing creativity all the time, and actually have a kind of level business head as well, and build into your schedule. You've got 7 days to work with. Maybe on a Monday, you can look after your social media. You can do writing your emails. You can do your business maintenance and build in your creativity time. I think that certainly works better for me. I guess that's the way it always worked. You always used to have to book recording studio time.
Yeah.
You had to be creative on demand.
Creativity on demand. I like that. One of the other things that doesn't get spoken about a lot is a close group of friends. Having good friends within the industry is also really important, I think.
I think generally people, and I guess this happens when you get to a certain point in the industry and in your experience level, because if you've just started out then and you contact a pro, if I was just starting out and asked you a page of A4's worth of advice on studio gear, then you don't have the space necessarily in your day to do that.
Yeah.
And I understand that now. I don't think I quite understood it then. But once you get to a certain level, there are a lot of nice people in this industry.
Oh, yeah.
That you can contact and just ask some advice, and there's lots of very, very friendly people. There are also a lot of people who aren't willing to share the kind of secrets and processes. I'm not one of them. I'm not too protective with things. I understand why people get protective with things, but it's definitely important to have people around, for sure.
Are there any records you've discovered recently where you kind of had to stop and just like listen for a second?
The Pet Snake record.
Oh my goodness.
There's a track called Smile or Die on that is just like, mate, that's the best song I've heard in years. I actually messaged Evelyn, who is under Pet Snake, just like, that song is just amazing. I want to add some pedal steel to it. I'm going to try and do it this week just for a laugh, just for my own sake. That's amazing. Michelle Willis was a big game changer record for me. The album's called Just One Voice. Michelle Willis sang with David Crosby in his later years. She is amazing. Go and get that album, Just One Voice. It's amazing. And
then what is a practicing technique that you've kind of found recently that might apply to a bunch of different instruments? So for me, playing slowly.
I agree with you entirely. The one thing that would be the thing I would normally have said is practice slowly and practice with a click. Record yourself would be my other response to that. You can do it with your phone, you can do it with the most basic of recording interfaces. You don't have to spend money to do this, really. If you're trying to do like the thing I was doing the other day, which was a little tricky part, and I thought I had it with the click, recording myself, and I realized I was still pushing. I was really, obviously notably anxious and playing ahead of the beat, so I was anticipating. So to really land that, it helped me to listen back to it and really understand where the accents are and where the musicality is and things.
If I think about ways that you fill in gaps, for example, with the vocal, like lyrics matter to you, can you talk through some of your thought processes with that kind of stuff?
I think going back a stage, even on that, I think it's really, we were talking before about understanding different instruments and different techniques on different instruments. For any musicians, understanding a vocalist and what it takes to be a good vocalist, a really good vocalist, is so deeply important, because our job, if you have a vocalist on a song, our job as the members of the band is to provide something that the vocalist can sing into. It's like having a really good amplifier for my guitar. There's a huge difference because it allows the guitar sound to bloom. If you have a really good track to sing into, and I'm not a vocalist, but it really helps to understand for a vocalist to understand where they can give it more vibrato, where they can really get into a track, something nice and dynamic. Listening to vocals and listening to lyrics, I'll sometimes have a lyric sheet, or I might even just write it on my chart of like sad, hopeful, whatever it might be, and the different parts of the song. I'll listen to the vocal. I might choose 2 or 3 notes from the vocal line and just fit them in between. I'll try and never overplay over the vocals, nothing worse.
Your level of restraint is insane.
I think that comes from recording myself a lot and being recorded a lot, and also being recorded when you're playing with 5 or 6 other musicians in a room. There is an element that you don't want to put your best Yngwie Malmsteen lick in, just in case you do happen to fluff the end note and you kill the take. I think there's an element of that that's there, but it's always serve the song. That is your main purpose as a musician. Serve the damn song. You should be able to, I remember talking to you about this, is that Standing in the Shadows documentary. There was one of the keyboard players, and he said, oh yeah, there's drummer number 1, Uriel Jones, will go to start a song, and then you'll get the other guy and he'll go and he'll be able to sing you all the drum fills that start a song for the different drummers.
Yeah.
And I think if you can't do that, that's like why Ringo is such a good drummer, in my opinion. It's the amount of Ringo drum fills you can just sing. It's so important. You can't sing. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Again, that's also personal choice.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't love, and I'm not really certainly not into playing the music that's really, really intense. But all that being said, I've played my fair share of fast country instrumentals and challenging dexterity stuff. But yeah, it's all about balance, isn't it?
100%, man. 100%.
Chocolate cake, but not at every meal.
Sadly, yes. One plugin you cannot live without.
That Universal Audio Room, Ocean Way.
Ocean Way.
It's terrifying. It's so good. Why is it so good when you've got a lot of close mics on guitars in here without the ability to do necessary? I've had room mics up in here, but it gets very loud. That's why I got the aux box, which of course has the room thing in it. To have something so convincing as an echo chamber is really, really helpful.
When you get an email from somebody to do some remote recording, what are some of the etiquettes you found that actually quite help?
I kind of have a preordained list of things that I will always get them to answer. I'll always ask for references, like send me some songs that you want me to sound like. I think how much they want me to play on the song. There was a record I did with Liam Gallagher that was really good for me and my career. The first time they sent that through, I asked them all the usual questions and they just said, we don't really know, we're just kind of trying it out, just go with what you feel on it. So I stacked on the first set of takes, it was pads and more ambient ethereal stuff, just thinking, well, they've got a nice track but there's no Hammond on it, maybe I can occupy that space. And then they sent a message back saying, Liam really likes the sound of it, but we need some licks on the chorus and we need a solo. So in which case, well, that's fine. And then for me, it's a kind of judgment call of, in that case, well, it's Liam Gallagher. If I go with Beatles as my main reference point and Oasis records, then I'm not going to be that far wrong. So I can incorporate that flavour into what I do. The one thing I'm trying to do now at this part of my career is always try and sound like me. It's very easy, I think, to try and just change what you do as your natural tonal palette and try and conform to I'll take on pop records or, it's business. We've got to do these things.
Absolutely, yeah.
But now I'm trying to kind of say, well, actually, there's a much better guitar player that can do that for you. I kind of do this well, but maybe I can try this and see what you think of this part. And generally that sits in pretty well anyway. So
speaking of uniqueness, besides your capabilities of playing a wide variety of things, what is really interesting is that your acquisition of interesting guitars.
The principle is it goes with what we were just saying about, I'm trying at this point in my career just to play like me and sound like me. So I'm getting the guitars that allow that to happen and allow me to be the most creative. But the way I'm going is more vintage guitars that are serviceable and usable, because there is something in that. I don't think I ever realised how much there is. I can't afford a 59 burst. There's no expensive Gibson or whatever. I would love to. But there are vintage guitars that are accessible that do sound different. 100%.
Let's talk about one that's not either of those two things, and that is your 58? Is it a 58?
It's a 58 Telly. It's very good.
It is. It is. I love it.
And if James Bay's watching this, I got your Telecaster. There's a photo of James Bay in the shop, but and he's trying this, and apparently he was going to come back for it, but I got it before him. I tried it. I got it from New Kings Road Vintage in London, and it's
legends, by the by. Yeah,
really great. Rick is fantastic, and if you're looking in those markets, Rick is going to tell you exactly what is wrong or right about guitar, and he's great to buy from. This was not silly expensive. I mean, it depends what your version of silly expensive is. It's a damn expensive guitar, but it's not insane. It's been played, but the minute I picked it up, it was like, it's
crazy good.
It's so good. The idea is to get this to, I'm going to have it refinished again eventually to more like the authentic spec, but it's largely original. Put it very, very carefully back in the rack.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for sharing and dispensing a lot of wisdom. I appreciate you, not just as an incredible musician, but also as a good friend. And I hope that the people out there have had a chance to get to the end of this video and also to get a lot of knowledge from you.
I hope so, and subscribe to Alex's channel right up there.
Only after you subscribe to Scott's channel, which will also be up here.